Awesome. There we go. So let's get this bad boy started here. We're going to be talking about the IUL. My goal today, my goal is to be able to go over some of the presentations that I give when talking to clients, to be able to go over some of the talk tracks that I use when talking to clients. And if we even get some time, I want to actually open up one of the carriers and run through some numbers. Okay. The biggest thing I'll give you is this. Okay. If you're eager to learn about the IUL, this is the biggest thing that'll help you. There's no such thing as a perfect plan. There's absolutely no such thing as a perfect plan. So if someone ever embedded in your head that the IUL is a solution for every single person across the board, regardless of their age, regardless of their health, regardless of the dollar amount that they're contributing to you, that person is a liar. That person should lose their license. Okay? There's no such thing as a perfect plan. There's not. There's a place for term insurance. There's a place for GUL. There's a place for final expense. There's a place for the IUL, and there's a right way to design it, and then there's the wrong way to design it. If you focus more on the mission of helping people and less on the commission of what these policies pay, you'll always do the right thing when it comes to designing these plans. Now, the biggest question you might ask yourself is, well, why, what does that have anything to do with the design and my commission? It has a lot to do with it. It has a lot to do with it, okay? Throughout this presentation and this explanation of the IUL, I want you to think about a mortgage the entire time that I'm explaining about this. I want you to think about a mortgage. If you have a 30-year mortgage, right? You just bought the house, you got a 30-year mortgage, and the mortgage payment the bank tells you is $1,500. You know that if all you pay is $1,500 a month, okay, you're going to take 30 years to pay off this mortgage, right? You know that. What are a couple other things that you know? You know that the first 10 years is primarily interest. That's the bank collecting their money, right? The majority of your $1,500 a month payment is going towards interest, and a small amount brings down the principal. So if you look at what they call a, oh my God, what the heck is that schedule called when it comes to a mortgage? Not a mortality schedule, oh my God, anybody know the name real quick?
Amortization.
There you go. There you go. An amortization schedule. That's right. If you look at an amortization schedule, you'll see the first 10 years, the majority of your money goes towards interest and a small towards principal. And then what will happen is towards the second 10 years, it's almost like a 50-50. And then during the last 10 years, the majority of money is going towards principal and a very small amount goes towards interest. Okay. What happens if you pay on a $1,500 a month mortgage? What happens if you pay $2,000 instead? What happens if you pay more money than the policy asks for? Anybody know what that does? Think about it. It's not a trick question. What happens to a mortgage if you pay more money than the mortgage is requiring?
It's shorter.
You pay it off faster, right? All that
goes to the principal. It drops your mortgage. You pay it off quicker.
All the excess over that $1,500 amount goes directly to principal, and it bypasses interest. You pay off your mortgage faster, you build equity faster, right? There's a lot of benefits to doing it that way. You know, something that I just recently learned from one of our agents who's a very, very, very successful real estate investor is that if you make 13 payments on a 12-month payment mortgage, that extra payment you make every single year cuts down your 30-year mortgage to like 21, 22 years. That's freaking crazy. I never knew that.
Wow.
Why? Because you're making overpayments.
So learn something new that he just mentioned.
But, okay. So, cool. Wait, cancel. Let me admit. Okay, cool. So where was I? That's what happens, right? You make an overpayment. Now, what happens if you have a $1,500 mortgage and you don't pay $1,500, you pay $1,000 instead? What would happen eventually?
You default.
And you lose the house. You lose the house completely. Okay.
What'd you say?
You lose the house completely, right? So there we go here. So let me correlate that to the IUL, right? IUL mortgage, right? If you make your 30-year payment, that's the same thing as hypothetically paying what's called target in the policy. paying target, right? If you make an overpayment, that's the same thing as overfunding your policy, right? That's overfunding your policy.
So your target is like your minimum requirement, right?
Yeah, you should never go under target when you're designing the policies. And based on age, there's certain people that should never pay target. Like when you get into your mid 40s and 50s, you should always be making an over target payment. But it's our job as the agent to design it according to their budget, where whatever they can afford is an automatic overfund. Okay, right? If you make a below, right, or an underpayment of a mortgage, that's like paying the minimum. And I say this to you because every policy illustration will give you these numbers. It'll tell you, here's the target, here's the minimum. Anything over target is considered overfunding, right? So that's something that I learned very, very, very early in the game when it came to understanding how IULs work. And throughout this entire training, I want you to think about it that way, right? Now, how does an IUL work? What's the whole concept behind it? IUL is operating under a tax code called 7702-A. It's a tax code that was created back in 1904. That tax code basically says that proceeds from an insurance company can be drawn out on a tax-free basis if done the right way. Notice what I just said. Proceeds from an insurance policy can be drawn out on a tax-free basis if done the right way. The other thing that the tax code says is that death benefit from an insurance policy is tax-free. Believe it or not, guys, life insurance is the only financial strategy that you can use to help defend against estate planning taxes. Estate planning taxes, right? You guys remember names like Anna Nicole Smith, right? Remember when she passed away, there was a huge scandal and everything going on, right? Her estate meaning all of her assets were being attacked. And she didn't have a life insurance policy, and she had this huge estate tax bill to pay. And because she didn't have a life insurance policy, they had no choice but to come after her assets. If she had a life insurance policy, that money could be used to pay that estate tax bill, because money from life insurance is tax-free. And this tax code was created in 1904 to help defend against that, right? What ended up happening is insurance companies looked at this tax code and they said, what's the loophole? What's the loophole? Because believe it or not, at the time, the only thing that existed was term life. When this tax code was created, the only thing that existed was term life, 30-year term life insurance, which doesn't build cash, is not an asset in any way. So then insurance companies looked at this and said, there's got to be a loophole here. There's a way we can make a profit then, but also a profit for the consumer, you or the client, right? And then that gave birth to the concept of permanent insurance. So what kind of permanent insurances are there, right? There's a bunch of types. Whole life insurance is a type of permanent. It's the oldest of permanent insurance. It's the first one, right? Why do they call it whole life? It was designed to be there your whole life, right? Now, those policies are more focused on the protection of death benefit than the accumulation of cash, just so you guys know, right? The IUL came out somewhere in the 90s, okay? The Index Universal Life came out somewhere in the 90s because they said, man, if we have a permanent insurance policy grow at the rate of return that's tied to an index, it can make a lot more money than whole life. Whole life, so that you guys know, makes money off of the performance of the insurance company, right? So if the insurance company performs positive, then the whole life policy performs positive, right? The Index Universal Life, the IUL, which is what we're talking about today, is tied to the market or the index that you're using, okay? Now, let me show you the presentation I give to clients. And I'm giving you guys more detail than I give a client meeting, because there is such a thing as paralysis by analysis, okay? Being too technical in a client meeting can sometimes hurt you. because when a client doesn't understand, they'd rather not do anything than to do something. So you got to be it's a dance. You got to understand that you got to read their body language. Okay. I'm going to give you the presentation I give to clients when it comes to explaining the IUL. Okay. And then from there, we're going to see if we can get into some illustrations. Okay. The first thing I want you to understand is how money grows. That's the biggest thing, how money grows. And you know what? Hang on one second. Where are you? Oh, there you are. Financial first response. Puebli, can I make you a co-host so that if anybody comes in, you can let them in the room? Because I keep seeing the beeping coming in. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Awesome. Thanks. All right, cool. So there's 3 ways that money grows, right? The first method is the fixed method, right? The fixed method is a predictable interest rate, right? You got your interest rate. You're not going to go any higher. You're not going to go any lower than that interest rate, right? The biggest thing that comes to mind when people think of fixed is this word right here, safe. Now, when people think of safe, a safe place to put your money, a predictable place to put your money, the first place they think about is the bank, right? And what's the bank? The bank is a safe place to put money. The bank is also a liquid place to put money, which means you can tap into the money pre-retirement. You can tap into the money whenever you want without any kind of penalty or having to jump over any hurdles. It's very liquid, right? So what's the pro? Safe and liquid. What's the con? Inflation right now is at 4%. The con is that these fixed strategies typically make less than 1%. I mean, what's a bank paying nowadays on a CD? What's a bank paying on a savings account? Not much. I mean, it's a very small amount, right? So although your money's safe, you're still safely losing the value of your money, right? 80% of America goes here. Why? Why do they go there? I'll tell you why they go there. They understand it. They understand it. Because they don't have an education on the other vehicles, they choose to go here, right? They choose to go here, right? The second place you can put money, where 15% of America goes, is the market. What does the stock market do? Right? It looks like a heartbeat. It goes up and down and up and down. Lately, it's looked like a heart attack. Let's be real, right? It's kind of crazy. So do people go here for safety? Not really. Not at all. They go here for one thing and one thing only, and that's called a rate of return. They understand I could make money and end up here. I could lose money and end up down here, right? 2008, huge market crash. Real estate crashed, right? 38% drop in the market. It took America historically 8 to 10 years to recover from that 1 year loss. Just to get back what they lost, just to get back onto, from back to that dollar amount, not even a profit, just back to the dollar amount of what they originally lost. You know what that meant? Most people that were ready to retire had to continue to work longer and longer and longer and longer because they didn't have the money they needed in order to retire. This is where 15% of America goes, right? And then there's this third strategy, which is where about 5% of America goes. That's the wealth of America. And that strategy is called indexing. Well, Tony, what index are you talking about? There's a number of different indexes, but the more common one is called the S&P 500 index. S&P 500 index. These are the little details that I want you to really learn because it really gives you credibility. It's S and like the word and, not SN. It's S and, Standard & Poor, okay, 500 index. What exactly is that index? It's a measurement of the top 500 companies, the giants. So think about the giants, right? Think about Amazon, think about Microsoft, think about Walmart, Ford, General Motors, Procter & Gamble, the giants. This index is a collective measurement of all 500 of them. So it's not a measurement of the number one guy or the number 500. It's a collective measurement of all 500, almost an average. Now, what the index is measuring is where those 500 companies started versus where they ended, right? Sometimes they start here and they end up here. That's a positive index. Sometimes they start here and they end here. That's a negative index. Does that make sense? Nod your heads if you get it. Good. Okay, good. Perfect. So when you invest into an index, you're saying to the company, okay, when this market goes up, I want to go up with them, but to a limit. I'm not going to make 100% of what the index does, right? And now you might say to yourself, well, wait a minute, what kind of investor would want to cap themselves on the upswing? They got to get something in exchange for capping themselves on the upswing. What they're getting in exchange is when the market goes down, you're going to hit a floor, which means you're going to stay exactly where you last left off. That's the benefit. So there's a ceiling and there's a floor. The floor is there to protect you. The ceiling is there to protect the insurance company, right? That's the exchange that you're making in an index. Well, what's the ceiling? This is something I'll ask a client. I say, if I gave you a cap as to how much you can make, would you be attracted to a 6% ceiling? Would you be attracted to an 8% ceiling? That's how I typically begin my conversation with them. You know why? I begin that way because the reality is they're going to say yes at the 5, 6, 7 range. They're already in yes mentality at that range. What range do we cap? Most insurance companies cap anywhere from 9 to 12%. When they see that number, they're excited. Wait, you mean that if the market makes 9%, I can make the full 9? If the market makes 12%, I can make the full 12? Yes. What if the market makes 20? You're going to be capped, right? So if you're let's say the IUL that you're in has a 10% cap and you make 20, you're not making 20, you're making 10. Who keeps the rest? The insurance company, right? Now, if the market goes down to the negatives, you're going to have a floor and the floor is 0%, right? You want an analogy to that? That's a fair weather fan. You ever seen a fair weather fan? You know what a fair weather fan is? Like a bandwagon jumping for the sports world, right? The fair weather fan says, when the game is good, bro, I'm putting on that jersey. Woof, right? I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, baby. The game is good. If next year they suck, they take off that jersey. I want nothing to do with Tampa Bay, right? Kind of the same thing. You're saying, okay, when the game is good, I want to make money with the market. When the game is bad, I want nothing to do with that return. Let them deal with the negatives. I want nothing to do with the negatives. Okay? What does that mean? That means that the worst thing that could happen on any given year is you make a 0% return. But the best thing that could happen is you hit the ceiling and you make a 9% return. There's going to be some years where you make 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, somewhere in this area here. What's the average? Average is about 5 to 7.5, 6 to 8%, somewhere around there. That's kind of your average return. But you're making that in a safe world with market-like returns. That's pretty cool. Now, because of that tax code that I talked about earlier, this vehicle now has the ability to grow tax-free. Holy crap, Tony, you mean to tell me that, hang on a second. You mean to tell me, Tony, that you could show me a vehicle, and this is what I'll literally do with the client, that if I had a bucket, right? There's my bucket. You mean to tell me I can put as much money as I want into it? As much money as I want. I mean, if I got millions, I can put millions. If I got 10,000 a year, I can put 10,000 a year. I can put as much money as I want in this bucket. And this bucket is going to give me the safety of the bank because it's going to have a 0% floor. The rate of return of the stock market at a cap of about 10 to 12%. But because this is managed from an insurance company, my profits are tax-free. And even in certain states, creditor safe, which means you can't be sued, garnished, or levied. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Like, goodness, hell yeah. What's the biggest question a consumer would have the moment I'm at this level of the presentation? What would you say is the biggest question in their head? Somebody unmute themselves. Let me know what you're thinking.
Cost. Cost.
What's that?
Cost.
And what's the catch?
There it is, Dante. Perfect. Cost is the insurance kind. You're thinking cost because you're an insurance agent. Take away the insurance agent. Talk to the regular average Joe. What they're thinking is, that seems too good to be true. What's the catch? What the hell is the catch? right? So what's the catch to this? Here's the catch. There's another bucket down here, smaller bucket, and some of your money's leaving through this spigot. You see that spigot on that first one? Some of the money leaves that bucket and enters this one. You know what this bottom bucket is? Premiums, insurance premiums. Well, Tony, what kind of insurance? Life insurance. Let's just say hypothetically it's $500,000 worth of life insurance, right? So I put money into this bucket. This bucket is growing according to the index, but some of this money is going to enter this bucket down here, and this is going to pay for insurance premiums. How do I get access to this money? If I die, you get a death benefit. You pass away, you're going to leave your family with the $500,000 worth of life insurance plus the cash, right? The insurance company doesn't keep the cash. If properly structured, the insurance company doesn't keep the cash. You leave your family with both, right? But you're also going to get living benefits with a lot of the companies that we represent, which means if you get sick, injured, or ill, cancer, strokes, heart attacks, severe burns, brain paralysis, ALS, organ transplant, paralysis, or you need a nurse to take care of you, right? Because you developed what's called a need for a lack of an active daily living, dressing yourself, feeding yourself, transferring yourself. Any of those types of things, that could really ruin somebody financially because they're not able to work during those types of situations. So living benefit says tap into your insurance money before you tap into your actual money. And use this money tax-free. You don't got to pay it back for whatever you want. Use it for whatever you stinking want. Use it for the medical bills if you don't have health insurance. But what if you do have health insurance? Use it for the living expenses, the electric, the water, the mortgage. Use it for whatever you want, right? Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Now, what's the drawback? This is the part that a lot of people don't disclose. I'm the first one to disclose it in any presentation if you've ever seen me. Here's the drawback to this. 2 limitations. 1, this is a long-term vehicle. You cannot, as the consumer, say, hey, I'm going to go into this for 1, 3, 4, 5, 7 years. You can't. This is long-term. This is long-term. You got to give me at least a 10-year commitment. Anything longer, beautiful. More power to you. That's just icing on the cake. But you got to give me at least a 10-year commitment. Mr. Klein, I'm looking at you square in the face right now, and I'm telling you, if you give me less than 10 years into this, I'm going to guarantee you're going to get back less than what you put in. Guarantee you're going to get back less than what you put in. You see that word I just used? Guarantee you're going to get back less than what you put in if you give me less than 10 years. See, the wealth of America thinks long-term. The wealth of America thinks legacy. The wealth of America thinks patience. Unfortunately, we live in a world of immediate gratification. If you don't see a return right away, you don't want to do it. But the problem with that scenario is that nothing great ever happens right away. It just doesn't happen that way. You got to give me long-term commitment, right? Mr. Klein, if you decide to do business with me, I am not a side chick material. I am a wifey material. I am not here for 1 to 2 years. I'm here for the long haul. I'm here to make you a little bit uncomfortable today so you could be really comfortable later, Mr. Client. Is there anybody right now in your corner that's willing to take on that task? Because your accountant right now just wants to help you save taxes when? Right now. I want to make sure you have it. I want to make sure at 65 and at 70 and at 75, you're not working at the front entrance of the Walmart. I mean, think about it. How old is the greeter at the Walmart you go to? Don't worry, I'll wait. Right? And I don't know where you guys are. There's people from all over the country right now. How old is the greeter at your Walmart? He's older. Why? Because he has to work. He's not able to retire, or she. Either she has to rely on the government system, has to rely on the family, or has to just work because they ran out of funds. This gives you the ability to draw money long term on a tax-free basis. Here's the other limitation to this. You have to qualify with your health. You see, the amount of money that goes into this bucket is based on your health and your age. The younger you are, the lower the cost. The healthier you are, the lower the cost. Simple as that. Sorry, let me adjust it a little. There you go, perfect. Simple as that. Simple as that. Those are the 2 things that they need to know up front. So if you're older, right? This cost is higher. So how do you offset this? You have a smaller policy, more money. That's called overfunding. Remember how I started the training about target, overfunding, minimum funding, right? That's what this works. So I like to use acronyms when it comes to this presentation. The last thing that I'll do is I'll do this. I'll say, listen, this product is going to give you what I like to call perks. The P stands for protection. Protection from passing away prematurely, protection from getting sick, injured, or ill along the way. So if you die too soon, $500,000 to your family plus the cash. You get sick along the way, $500,000 access to money so you can help pay for medical expenses, and the cash is still yours for the future, right? You can use this money for emergency. Why? Because there's this rule that the 401k has called the 59.5 rule that says if you take your money before 59.5, you pay what? Anybody know? What do you pay?
Penalties and taxes.
10% penalty and taxes. This product doesn't have that. You can take your money out before retirement, no penalty, no taxes. You can use this money for what a lot of people like to use it for, and that's called retirement. But Tony, does it have to be for retirement? No, you can also use this money for college savings for your children in the future if you need to. But what if I don't have kids and I just want to save? Well, then you can use this money for any kind of savings that you want. As long as you understand the two restrictions. It's got to be long-term, and you have to have the health to qualify. Okay? This is called a LIRP. Life Insurance Retirement Planning. It's not called a 7702 plan. There's people that like to say that. By the way, that's against the law. You cannot call it a 7702 plan. You cannot disguise the fact that it is an insurance policy. It's an insurance policy. Be proud of it. You want some statistics? I'll give you some. You ready? J.C. Penney's survived the Great Depression leveraging their permanent insurance policy. John McCain funded an entire campaign for presidency leveraging his permanent insurance policy. Walt Disney World opened up Walt Disney in Orlando funding using his permanent insurance policy. Every president is given one of these plans as a version of their pension. General Electric has five board members making seven-figure income. They're each putting $9,000 a year into their 401k because it's a required minimum, but they're putting between $80,000 to $300,000 a year into their permanent insurance policies. This is a technique that's been used by the Wealth of America for years. And you know how soon the Wealth of America puts this on someone? 2 weeks after they're born. 2 weeks after they're born, they start putting this. Mr. Klein, have you ever heard of a trust fund baby? Welcome to the funding mechanism for the trust fund baby. Because when you finally hit retirement into this vehicle, you could take the lump sum of money if you want, tax-free, reinvest it, which wouldn't be smart, right? Because why? I mean, think about it. When you hit retirement, you're conservative. You want to take the money out of a vehicle making 5 to 7% without market risk and invest it where? That's going to make the same with the same risk, right? Or you can pension this money out. You can take a lifetime stream of income. You can take a lifetime stream of income, right, on a tax-free basis. Tax-free basis, where in the future, when you're on a fixed income and you're no longer working, you have to worry as to what Uncle Sam wants to do with taxes in the future. But in this particular place, it does not matter what Uncle Sam does with taxes because this is completely tax-free. Now, Mr. Klein, you might be thinking of a Roth IRA as a possible option. You can do a Roth IRA, but I just want you to understand the Roth IRA doesn't give you the insurance coverage. So whatever you have in there is all you're leaving for your family if something hits the fan, right? Number two, if you make too much money, you're not able to go into the Roth IRA. This is why the Wealth of America loves to go here because they can't do the Roth IRA. And number three, you're limited to how much money you can put into the Roth IRA. It's anywhere from $6,000 to $7,000 depending on your age. And if you want to put more than that, you're kind of stuck. And number four, the Roth IRA does give you the limitation where if you touch your principal pre 59 and a half, you're going to pay taxes and a penalty, where this doesn't have that. Right? So that's the presentation I give. You know what I'm looking for from the client afterwards? Number one, is this a product that you have interest in? Yes, it is. Why? Because it's an asset. Insurance, a lot of people look at it as an expense. I got to pay my premiums, just like car insurance, my premiums. This, the client can now say, okay, so how much do you want to put in savings? Knowing that the savings account is going to also give you an insurance policy. So you got to get them to start thinking savings versus expense. That's the first thing you got to do. Second thing is, what dollar amount do you want to put into savings? And it has to be a number that, number one, challenges you, but number two, you can do during a good month or a bad month. Because Mr. Client, I want you to know something. If the dollar amount you pick every single month, you have to negotiate with yourself whether you want to pay it or not, then don't do it. Because I don't want you to negotiate for the next 20 years of your life. I want it to be a number that you look at it and you say, I'm going to pay myself first, because my cell phone company is not going to pay me when I retire, even though I'm going to pay that bill for 30 years without a problem. I need to pay myself first. No matter what, good or bad, I need to pay myself first. So Mr. Client, what is that number? They're going to give you a number. Now, if that number, when you run illustrations, does not cover the total amount of insurance that they need, like let's say you do an analysis and you find out this person needs $750,000, but they can afford, $250 a month, and $250 a month really only gives them a $400,000 insurance policy, right? You offset the difference with a term insurance policy. You offset. So their permanent policy, okay, their permanent policy is, the 400,000, and you designed it based on the monthly amount they can afford, but the shortage is covered by a term insurance policy. Now you have two policies you're selling, right? And you're still doing right by the client. Does that make sense? Okay. Let me now give you this here for a minute. Someone gave me this visual a long time ago, and it really helped me understand the structure of how the policy works. Now, this presentation, this drawing I'm going to give you, it's really something I give to agents. It's not really something I give to clients unless I'm dealing with like a technical person. Okay? So pretend you got a cup. This is your cup. How much water can you put in the cup? Anybody know? Go ahead and unmute yourself. How much water can you put in the cup? It's not a trick question.
So when it's full. When it's full.
Okay, when it's full, right? You could put water up to the rim, right? If you put more water than the cup can hold, it pours out. Okay? Now, how do I transition this to an insurance conversation? Target is like filling up the cup halfway. Target is like filling up the cup halfway, right? That means you have this much room to overfund. But if you put too much in and the water flows out, hence the cash flows out, it becomes a modified endowment contract, a MEC, which means that a MEC, just so you know, for all intents and purposes, means that now all of this is taxable, which is obviously something you want to avoid. Okay? You want to avoid it. This cup represents your face value, the size of the insurance policy. Okay? What does that mean? That means this. The bigger the cup, the bigger the insurance. The smaller the cup, the smaller the insurance. The bigger the cup, the more cash you can put in it because it holds more water. The smaller the cup, the less cash you can put in it because it doesn't hold as much water, right? This made so much sense to me because when you give that presentation, your client might say, well, listen, give me the smallest policy possible, but I want to put $10,000 a month into it. You can't do it. You can't, because what happens? Smallest policy means smallest cup. Smallest cup gives you limitations to how much water you can put into it. So, Mr. Client, the size of this cup is 100% determined by your monthly amount that you're willing to contribute into this. I'm going to give it room so that you can put more in the future, right? But we never want to do this. We never want to put this much water into the cup. You never want to put this much water into the cup because now you're underfunding the cup. Now, to the defense, where does minimum payment make sense? Minimum payment makes sense if someone's going through a tough 6-month window, a tough 1-year window. Man, I've been paying into this policy, but I lost my job. Is there any way I could save it while I look for another job? Yes, make your minimum payment. At least that way you're not canceling the policy, right? But listen, don't stay down here forever. The moment you recover, get yourself back up to here. And if you can, get yourself up over here, right? Because this target, pretend target means 30 years of growth, right? So why do I say that? Because now I'm going to transition to the next lesson. All right. First off, before I transition to the next lesson, any questions? Does anybody have any questions?
Question on the chat.
There's a question on the chat.
Frank the Tank, wouldn't you be able to open another one in the future? If you say now I have more money, 10 years later.
Yeah, so the answer is yes. You can open up another one, hence what? You can have more than one cup, right? The thing you need to understand is this. Each time you're going to get another cup, you've got to medically qualify again. And if heaven forbid your health changes and you can't have it, you might be in a tough position. And the cost of the cup changes because you're that much older. But yes, you can. You can. However, if there's room in the first cup to put more in, because maybe you're only putting it up to here and you don't have a need for more insurance, right? Remember, cup equals more insurance. If you don't have a need for more insurance, but you just have more money you want to put in and there's room, you might as well put it over here than adding more. You might as well fund more into it. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So any questions before I go into the next piece? Because now I want to show you how I design policies relevant to target. And this really helped me understand it. Questions? Good. Oh, James, did you have a question? You're muted if you do.
Hey, Tony. Can you hear me, Tony?
I can hear you now.
Okay, now I just want to say that one of the terms I use to describe an IUL, and you just hit it, it is a self-completing plan. It's a self-completing plan. It addresses everything that life throws at you.
Yep, that's true. Because if you die too soon, it pays your family, right? If you get sick along the way, it pays you. And if you get well into retirement, it gives you tax-free income along the way and still leaves a legacy behind. He's 100% right. He's 100% right.
Tony, question, Frank.
Yes.
It will always 100% of the time need to be medically underwritten 100% of the time?
Yes. I don't know a single IUL that doesn't have medical underwriting. There are IULs that don't require you to get a medical done, meaning you don't got to schedule a meeting with a nurse to get your blood drawn and urine, but they're always going to look at the medical history to determine the cost of the insurance. And you can get declined, yes. Okay? All right. Let me give you this one last thing because this last piece helps me understand how to design policies, okay? I want you to take a look at this. I want you to say target equals 30 years, okay? If you're making a target payment, it's because you got 30 years or more to compound your money and grow your money, okay? If the person doesn't have 30 years before they retire, then you have to start overfunding to make up the shortage. You got to start overfunding in order to make up the shortage of time. Okay? You have to. Hence the whole concept, right? You got a 30-year mortgage, but you make more than the mortgage payment. You're paying off the mortgage faster, and you're compressing it down because you're doing more work than the policy will do on its own. Okay? So understand, target means 30 years. So now let me ask you this question. Does it make sense? Does it make sense to write up an insurance policy, an IUL, on a 50-year-old and write it at target? It doesn't. Because if target equals 30, right? That means that the 50-year-old really won't see the value of this product until he or she is what? 80. Doesn't make sense, right? So you have to overfund to catch up and shrink down the time. Here's my formula. It's very simple. Anybody that is less than 33 years of age, I run it right at target. I'm not going to say I don't do policies at target. Anybody under 33 years of age, I run it right at target. Why? Number one, they got 30 years before they retire. They got 30 years to compound their money. Number two, historically, people under that age bracket have not hit their maximum income potential. And whatever dollar amount they're putting in, they're going to be able to put in more money in the future. And I want to give room for that. Hence, right, the cup is only half full. Give them room to put more, right? And number three, anybody under 33 years of age typically has the highest amount of insurance need. Why? Because that's when they're raising a family. That's the starting point of their mortgage. Their kids are the youngest. When you talk about income replacement, you got a 2-year-old, that's a lot of years you got to replace your income until that kid turns 20 and goes to college, right? So there's a higher need for insurance for the person under 33 for logical life reasons. But in the same token, the person has 30 plus years to compound their money. That's why I run it at target date. That's why I run it at target. Now, anybody between 33 to 39, I overfund by 30%. I start putting more money in. Why? Because they have less time before retirement hits them, right? That means that a 40-year-old, I'm going to overfund by 40%. Because they got even less time, so I got to put more in from an overfunding standpoint. So this cup right here, for the 30-year-old, it's not halfway, it's a little bit higher. The 40-year-old, it's even higher. My 50-year-old, if you had to take a guess, what percentage am I overfunding by to the 50-year-old? Anybody? Anybody? Unmute yourself. Let me hear you.
50. 50.
There you go. 50%. I'm over. That's my formula. It's just a simple thing that I learned when it came to creating IULs in a way where it was beneficial. Here's another rule that I treat. When you're over 50 years of age, you really got to be thinking 500 plus per month for it to even make sense, for it to even like remotely benefit the person. If it's under that amount, guys, look for another vehicle, honestly. And you might say to yourself, well, Tony, what's another vehicle, right? I'm meeting with a client, they're in their 50s, they want to save and they want insurance. Why can't I, what should I do if the IUL doesn't make sense because they can't afford $500 a month? I would put them into a GUL, and then I would then open up a Roth IRA and have them put money in the Roth IRA. That's what I would do. Because the GUL gives them a guarantee of insurance until age 100, 105, however you design it, has living benefits, has a return of premium option, which is pretty cool because you get your money back if you want to cancel the policy in the future. But the Roth IRA, completely separate from the GUL, allows for the tax-free growth in an index strategy. You can do an indexed Roth IRA, right? Now, because I only got 4 minutes left, this is the part where this industry becomes corrupt, right? And this is just me being black and white to you guys, okay? We as insurance agents get paid on target. So whatever commission level you're at, whether you're a 65 contract, a 95 contract, 100%, that percentage is based on the target amount, not the overfunded amount. The overfunding, you're only going to get like 2 to 3%. So you want to know what's the good and the bad about this industry? The good, anybody can get a license. You know what's the bad? Anybody can get a license. Unfortunately, you're going to deal with some corrupt people that are more concerned about their wallets than they are the benefit of the client. And they're going to design every single age bracket here at target because they want to get paid the most on the money that the client's putting in. And they're not doing right by the client. So whenever you come across a client and they say, I already have I have an IUL, number one, congratulate them. Great. I'm glad you're a believer of insurance. I'm glad you're a believer of permanent insurance. Now, Mr. Client, would you allow me an opportunity to do a competitive analysis to that policy? Can I compare that policy and make sure that you're getting the biggest bang for your buck? Because if I can show you something better for the same amount of money you're already putting in, logic says you should take action. But if I can't, you at least still walk away knowing you have the best that the market has to offer because I compared it to everything else in the market space. Would you allow that opportunity? You'd be amazed how many times I come across policies that are improperly designed because of this feature, because people care more about their commissions than anything. You'd be amazed if you just ask the questions. Now, one thing you want to obtain, because I literally have only 2 more minutes left before I jump into the overview meeting. One thing you want to obtain, and do me a favor, write your questions down right now if you have questions, because I want to screenshot them and answer them later. One thing you want to obtain whenever you're dealing with someone that has an insurance policy that is over 3 years of age is what's called an in-force ledger. Don't just look at the illustration they have that's 3 years old. Look at the current performance of that policy and what the insurance company's future performance predicts. That's called getting an in-force ledger. You're calling the insurance company that they're doing business with and saying, hey, give me a copy of this person's current insurance policy, where it is today and what you project it to look like in the future. What is that called again? In-force ledger. Best way to do it, 3-way phone call with your client. Best way to do it. Best way to do it. Okay? And I apologize that I don't have enough time to answer more questions, but I do want to be respectful of the overview that's about to happen in the next minute. So here's what I need. If you have questions, pop them in. You got about a minute and a half to do it. I'm going to screenshot it, and then when I'm done today, I'll answer the questions. There's more concern about their watch and their ring before the client. You're right. You're 100% right. Right? Wouldn't you be able to open up another one in the future? We already answered that question. Or post your, or you're right, or post your questions on the team chat, right? If you're on the team chat, post your questions. I apologize, guys. You know, there's no way to go through a training on the IUL and cover all grounds on a 1-hour session. It's just not possible, but hopefully this was beneficial. Here's what I would love from you. Give me your 2 takeaways. Give me your 2 takeaways on the chat. Give me your 2 takeaways. And if you have a question, post it on the chat, right? Microsoft Teams, if you're not on the chat, make sure you get on. And let me know what those are. But I'm going to let you guys get going. I would love to open it up for Q&A, but I want to be respectful to those people that invited guests. And I'm going to hop onto the overview. Have a good one. Be blessed. And I'll see you guys on the flip. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tony. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye, guys.